Hello and welcome to the Albion Obsessed podcast. I hope you've been keeping it real this last week. Today we are joined, yes, I said it. Yes, today we are joined by James, one of the people behind this amazing fanzine, DOGMA. So we're going to be chatting to James a little bit about that. But before we do, James, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm good, thanks. Yeah, I'm good. Sitting here on a Friday night, got my kind of rock and roll Friday night juice, and we're all good to go. I'm good, thanks.
Good skills, good skills. Joe, you're back. How are you?
I'm back. I'm on my chair. Haven't left. I'm good.
You were very loud then, Joe. Very loud.
It's probably because I shouted down the microphone, Tom.
Well, I know it's a Friday night, mate.
Sorry.
Keep it real, Joe. Come on. And we also welcome back Mr. Curtis Friend. Curtis, brother, how are you doing?
I am spectacular. Very glad to be here with you chaps. Tom, how are you though? How are you? You good?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I thought the podcast was at 5, so I was here like an hour ago, kind of just looking around, going, "Where is everyone?" I got the time wrong. It's been a long day. It's been a hard day, but it's the weekend, so we move. So let's jump straight into it. Let's chat to James a little bit. Now, James, before we get into all the dogma stuff, we like to ask guests 3 questions, and they just help build that sort of image of you as a Brighton and Hove Albion fan. So the first question we're going to put to you, James, is when was your first game? When was the first time you watched Brighton and Hove Albion play?
My first game was whatever the first game at Gillingham was. Weirdly, but also kind of, I guess, formatively, having your first home ground as Gillingham is an interesting experience. I think if you can fall in love with it there's nothing that you can't do. So that was my first ground. My first game would have been there. I was desperate to go before that, begging my dad and my uncle and my granddad to take me along with them to the Golston. But this was the height of the war years, and my dad didn't want me involved in something which might not exist in 2 months' time. I think that would be pretty devastating to a 7-year-old. So yeah, my first home game was whatever the first game at Gillingham was.
Decent. As you say, a very big trek for your first home game. So yeah, decent skills. Joe, I hand the mic over to you, my friend.
What's the second question, Tom? I've forgotten it. Is it goal? Is it shirt? I'm gonna go with shirt.
You go with shirt.
James, what's your favourite Brighton shirt?
Well, I knew you guys liked shirts, so I brought along an abundance of shirts, trying to potentially out niche you all, if that's even possible. The one I'm sporting at the moment is about as niche as it gets, which is a Moody T-shirt I bought, or my family bought for me outside the Millennium Stadium at the playoff final. It's got Mark McGee with a kind of crest and a little, I don't know if you can see it, but like of the Millennium Stadium there. But my favorite actual shirt, I mean, there's options. If we have time, shall we indulge?
There is always time for shirts.
Okay, right. So I think in ascending order, I think at third it'll probably be this little beauty, and little being the operative word because I couldn't even get it over my head now, I don't think. That's up there. It's classic, broad stripes. Quite like the pinstriping. Don't know what you guys think as aficionados.
Yeah. Big fan.
Yeah, I enjoy it. That's nice.
The Donatello sponsor as well.
And it's no secret that Tom loves a pinstripe. So
okay, cool. Right, we're in good company then. I think second, and this is all testament to my age, right? They're all of the similar era because that's the things you fall in love with are the things that you like forever. So second would be that one again. And this one is a classic. I also got it in a car boot sale at Basvik when I was about 6 or 7 or something like that, and wore it to death, including it's covered in the sort of stains and detritus that a 6-year-old picks up. But hardy, characterful. And then top of the part, I think it's everyone's favorite ever. I think it's the best shirt we ever had. Is the classic skin Mark 1.
Excellent choices.
Yeah, I think that shirt is just iconic. The first shirt back in Brighton, and that Mickey Adams era where we were just so brilliant. So they're my shirts. How do you feel about my selections?
I am a big fan of all of those shirts. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think my
Absolutely love it.
that first Skint one was the first Brighton shirt I ever owned. So that's got a special place in my heart, and I've told the story 1,000,001 times, but I'll tell it again. I rocked up to football training in Haywards Heath wearing that shirt as a 10-year-old, and I got laughed at because of it. All my mates were like Man United fans, Arsenal fans, whatever, and I wore that. And I got laughed at.
You went to Haywards Heath. I'm really sorry about that, Tom.
Thoughts and prayers.
Only joking, Haywards Heath. Only joking.
There you're going to get the Haywards Heath crew in the comments coming down in that case.
And it'll get even worse because I'll tell them I'm from Burgess Hill. And I know
no, that's like whoa. Yeah, that's not start a turf war now.
So next, James, who's your favourite player, past or present? Would you say?
Past or present? Again, like all my answers are going to be of that era. I mean, so I think my first favourite player was Gary Hart. There was something really like special about Gary Hart, and this is no detriment to him, but like it was an era of not many great players, like of the Gillingham era. I mean, like kind of iconic players, but he just had this like magic about him for a while. And then the later half of his career, scored the first goal at the Amex, I think, and that team that just about stayed afloat with him and Lloyd Owusu up front, like his whole career was just amazing and a great individual. But number one, I mean, again, it's going to be everyone's answers who's my sort of age, but it's Bobby Zamora. Can't be anyone else. Just the most, scintillating player, like again in an era of like muddy pitches and away games at Chesterfield or whatever, just this effortless cool and effortless skill and ease. And again, the later half of his career, what he did. So yeah, definitely Zamora. Can't say anyone else.
Yeah, when Zamora came back, I had the first Nike shirt already, but I bought another one just so I could get his name on the back because I had Kayal on the back of it. So I just wanted an extra shirt with Zamora. So yeah, I love that choice.
Yeah, Zamora coming back was spectacular. I remember a few seasons prior, Andy Naylor teased on the last day of the transfer window that a club legend was returning, and everyone was losing their absolute marbles about it being Zamora, and it turned out to be Dean Hammond. But yeah, it happened eventually. We got there, but no, James. I'm glad you said Gary Hart actually, because I do think he's a bit of a forgotten player.
Yeah.
He played at right back at one point as well, if I remember. He did a stint at right back. It was like Virgo went up top, Gary Hart went to right back. What a weird situation, but no, not bad for what, £1,000 and a tracksuits. Yeah, not bad at all. So James, let's jump in to this bad boy, Dogma. So James, this fanzine it's pretty spectacular. If I'm going to be brutally honest with you, it is fantastic. It's so nice to see that this sort of material still exists in a day of blogs on the internet and whatnot. So what was the reason behind Dogma? What did you think, or why did you think that there was a space and a place for Dogma in the world?
Yeah, so I think twofold. So Parker, who set it up, he'd done some writing for the Seagulls Love Review, and he wanted to revive a fanzine. He thought, we don't have one, we should have one. That's where the genesis of the idea came from. And in its first few issues, it was very, very, very DIY, like staple bound, using lots of like stenciling and stapling in pictures and that sort of stuff. And then I just begged him to be involved. I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. Please, can I get involved at all? And I did. And then we started it was this like snowball effect of like really, really talented, amazing people sort of gravitating towards what we were doing. And the kind of the product that you guys have now is testament to like how talented the people we work with are, because that they make it as good as it is, because they're so good at what they do that it couldn't be any worse than what it is. But in terms of like setting up that kind of culture or what we wanted to represent, I think like your point, Tom, about the internet was really interesting, because if you think of fanzines historically, it was like week by week, 50p outside the ground. It covered that news or that kind of current affairs and that kind of chit chat and conversation that was going on. But that's so well catered for by what we have now of like, you know, like you guys like podcasts and blogs like We Are Brighton and stuff, which do that like almost like weekly, quite short term stuff. So we were like, if we're going to do this, it has to be different. It has to be like unique and have a USP, and then fill a kind of, without wishing to sound too kind of, you know, business like about it, but like fill a gap in the market, I guess. And I think that's very much like the product we've got, where the editorial is like long form. It covers topics which kind of don't really date. I mean, we publish 3 times a year, so it has to have a minimum shelf life of 3 months. But then as an object, we wanted to create something that you keep and that you have for posterity. So that also informs editorial tone. It's got to be even more long term. So that's the kind of genesis of the idea, really, what we're trying to achieve with it. I think people are really responding to that. I kind of use the kind of like vinyl record analogy. It's like there's a place for vinyl records in a basically an exclusively digital kind of, you know, music world, because you want the object, you want the experience, you want the tangible feeling of owning that artifact almost. And that's kind of what we're trying to replicate with Dogma.
And why, I might be being silly here, but why Dogma? What is the meaning behind the name of it?
So it has a kind of like pseudo-religious connotation that we all feel like we sometimes have when we're following our football team, in the sense that you're kind of, you're unthinking, you're committed, you're worshipping something bigger and higher than yourself. So it kind of comes from there, but also it's a nice name. It looks good when you type it out. It doesn't have any particular like meaning, so it can carry. But yeah, really, it's about that kind of pseudo-religious feeling that we feel like we have with our, you know, with Brighton and Albion. I'm sure you guys do as well.
Yeah, I was sat there yesterday trying to work out if it was like what do you call it? So if it's per letter and it meant something else. Yeah, I thought it was that. So I was like, D, what could that? I was like, A could mean Albion, but no, it's that simple. I love it
because it originally reminded me of the movie Dogma. That's where I thought that might be a thing. So
I love that film. Yeah, no, it's not. But
but
like maybe that's why it's deliberately vague. You can interpret it, you know, as you want. But yeah, that's in my opinion where it comes from.
So James, what's it like working with the team that you're currently working with that are involved in Dogma?
It's incredible. Like I said, you know, the reason it is the way it is now is because of how good the people involved are. And that's like a snowball effect. Like the more issues we do, the more insanely talented people that we gather, whether it's obviously, you know, writers, photographers, illustrators, and then we're looking to do like branch out into other stuff as well. And we're just gathering all these insanely talented people, and it's just an absolute pleasure. The kind of purpose of this really is to like be a release from the 9 to 5 and normal jobs, and it to be something that's really, really fun to do, you know, after work. And it absolutely is that. And a big part of that is working with the people that are involved. It's just the best.
Good. Yeah. I mean, whenever you pick up an issue, there are so many interesting written pieces. I mean, we've talked about the artwork. I mean, you know, the likes of Alfie, and you give out all that. Well, you did in the last issues, like the stickers and stuff, which is fantastic. And it helps, I suppose, build this little community that we have of all these fantastic people, writers, artists, and people that are just, as you say, really passionate about this one thing. It's one thing that we've all got in common, no matter that, you know, your creed, your race, religion, whatever. We all have this one thing in common, which is Brighton and Hove Albion. Obviously, like last season's come and gone now, so you're now onto this season, and you've just released a brand new one. That's a terrible way of saying it. You've just released a brand new
Tom, a fanalog.
I couldn't find the word.
Analog fanalog, we should call it.
You've just released a brand new analog fanalog. Now, so much has happened, and it feels like, I've said this before on a previous podcast, it feels like we're so far, like we've only just started the season, yet so much seems to have happened. So in the latest issue, what do you touch upon without giving away too many spoilers, because we don't want people to, get away with too much, but like what do you touch on? Have you been able to touch upon the exit of Graham Potter and the rest of the staff?
Well, yeah, it's interesting, and it's kind of related to what I was saying before about like the kind of stuff we like to publish is pretty non-time bound, for all the reasons that I've already covered, which is a nightmare when you're going to print on a Friday and on the Thursday night the manager quits, right? Because this takes months to build, like months to put together, and then suddenly the whole world goes upside down in a matter of in a matter of a few hours, and it would be impossible not to reflect that. So we do tackle it a bit, but we also take a longer term view. We also, one really key aspect of what we like to discuss in Dogma, a bit like what I was saying earlier, is we feel what's underrepresented in football media is fans' perspective and like the kind of lived experience, as we call it. So the kind of the grit and the culture and the bits and bobs that come from following a football team up and down the country for 30 years or whatever, we feel that's underrepresented. So we focus less on, we focus less on like managers or transfers or that kind of stuff, which is so well covered and brilliantly covered by other media outlets. We don't really feel like we need to do that. So we focus more on fan culture. But going back to what you were saying, I'm answering a question in a roundabout way. I apologize. We do reflect it a little bit, but it was a bit of a nightmare putting it together over the last week or so. I think in some ways putting the issue together was a bit like a metaphor for what has been happening at the club, in the sense that we freaked out, we panicked, but we're probably going to be okay because we take a longer term view. I feel like Tony Bloom probably shares that attitude with us as well.
Yeah, definitely. I absolutely love what you said about capturing the fans' experience and the fans' culture, because as you say, all that's covered is statistics and formations and was that selection right? Was this selection right? It's never about it's never about the feelings. And we're all about the feelings on this podcast. We've spoken very deeply about mental health before. Our previous episode with a guy from Zambia called Zombe, he was very positive mental health driven. And I feel like that is what this gives people an outlet, especially for reading it as well, to relive, like in this one, I hope you don't mind me saying, there's a bit on the Women's Euros, which Cam wrote, and I was there on that night, and every feeling that she jotted down, I felt as well. And it's that sense of, wow, like what a powerful thing.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the perfect example, Joe. I think you've answered Tom's question to me better than I could, which is like that article is and Cam's like writing and photography is so good, and it's a pleasure to have her involved. And like that, that's exactly it. Her perspective is on what she felt like going to that game and that experiencing that tournament. That's exactly the stuff we love to publish.
What's your favourite issue that you've released to date, James? I'm sure there's been a plethora that you've really liked, but what's one that really sticks out?
It's the latest one. I mean, I'm not being remiss by saying it's our best one yet, because of the nature of what I was saying earlier about that kind of snowball effect. It gets better and better and better every issue. The people we get involved, we have like an abundance of incredibly talented people. That's one point as well. It's like you don't realize until you start something like this how talented our fan base are. Like just that's just staggering. There can be that many people that are Brighton fans that are so good at that sort of stuff. But yeah, like this one, Curtis, absolutely this one. I think it's our tightest. I think the way that it came together with all the stuff I was saying about earlier gives it a kind of energy that we didn't, that I feel like is really unique. So definitely this one, yeah.
So what would you say, just to sort of follow on from that, what pushes you to do this? Like, what is your motivating factor?
Yeah, I think kind of a lot of what we've discussed already, like it being a release from a day job. I happen to work in publishing as well, but it's like different, and that keeps pushing us. Producing really nice things feels amazing. Like when you send it to print and when it arrives in your lap and it's been a bunch of pixels and images on a screen for 3 months and then the thing is there in your hands is amazing. We hope some of that experience gets passed on to subscribers because it arrives in the post, drops through the doormat, so you get that kind of delighting experience when you open it up. You don't know what's going to be in there, and like so that really pushes me to create really cool stuff, really. And just like a bit like you were saying, Tom, about the kind of like the community element, like, you know, meeting like, you know, people such as yourself and all the people that we've met and kind of got to know through it is so great. So yeah, I think that's what keeps us going.
I guess it gives the perfect analogy towards what social media is. Like it's all good having things on a screen, it's all good, but as soon as you get that, like I when I opened this, I was like, oh my god, this is amazing. Like the smell of it, the look of it, that just to have something to read and really delve into. Yeah, I absolutely love it.
Oh, it's so great that translates, because that's, you know, that's exactly what we're trying to achieve. So I'm really pleased to hear that.
It's kind of like that match day program type thing. You know, you've got that and it's this physical thing and you can read interviews from all these different people and get these perspective on things that you wouldn't necessarily know about. And as it was mentioned by yourself, you know, you get all these incredibly passionate people and it just really comes across in what you're doing. So.
Oh, that's great to know. Thanks. Yeah. Like the program is a big inspiration in a way, actually. And it's such a shame that, you know, they're becoming fewer and fewer, and definitely the quality is going down there. But yeah, that's exactly what we're trying to, you know, trying to replicate that experience. So yeah, good to hear.
Yeah, definitely. Just want to echo what Joe and Curtis have said there. I know it sounds really daft as well, but it's the feel of it. There's something. It just feels really good. Like, with all due respect to the match day program, you know, you feel a match day program and it's got a one feel to it, but there's something quite nice about flicking through this. And like a few of mine, I've folded down the pages going, oh, I'm going to read that again. I probably wouldn't do that with a match day program, but I have done that with my Dogma issues. So James, you've talked to us a little bit about the history of Dogma, how it first started out, you know, as you say, staple bound. And then, as you've rightfully said, you know, things are progressing and this one is your best issue yet. So what are the plans in the future for Dogma? Where does Dogma go from here?
It's a good question. I think testament to that kind of the talented people that we're gathering and the different skill sets and stuff that are kind of like revolving around us. We've got more ideas than we've got hours and hands to produce. What we'd really like to do is kind of get involved in the city centre and like the kind of wider Brighton and Sussex area a bit more. So you might have noticed there's an advert in the latest one for something that we're calling a communion. There we are. Look at that on cue. Cheers, Joe. Which we're calling communion, again with that kind of pseudo-religious element. But that's going to be our first like pop-up shop or kind of area in the city centre. So we're going to put it on during the World Cup, and we really hope that it's a kind of a mecca. Look at all these religious metaphors for people to come to and experience, and that's a theme that we'd like to continue. We can't say too much about something quite interesting that we're working on at the moment because, you know, we want it to be impactful and surprising, but the general theme of like city centre focal points is something that we'd like to do, to kind of take that kind of culture that we're trying to foster and make it like a reality and a physical thing, right? Would be really exciting. And yeah, there's plans afoot. And then just to continue to produce, you know, really good issues like the one we've just done. So yeah, we've got more ideas than pairs of hands at the moment. So.
That's amazing. I really can't wait for what's coming next. I absolutely adore like this is my first issue, I will say, and I took the dive and thought I'd, you know, get into it. But Tom's got something from a previous issue, which is the train ticket, which is just stunning. That's like so all cool. These tiny little bits of artwork that come out, and that means so much as well, like references to chants, players, results and stuff like that. It's just so good. How do people get involved in this and also, you know, subscribe if they want to? Where can they find you?
So the easiest place would be our website, which is dogmabrighton.com. pretty straightforward. Jump on there, and there's all the kind of relevant links to subscribe and get your copy. We're on social media as well, on Twitter and Instagram at DOGMA BRIGHTON. And yeah, we just encourage you to get involved and tell your friends.
Goes without saying, I will leave the links in the description below as well. So go and check out the incredible stuff that Dogma are doing for sure.
Thanks, Joe. That's great.
So, James, moving over to the club itself, how have you found the season so far? Let's take the manager stuff out of it. How have you found it as a whole?
I mean, it's hard to answer that without referring to the managerial situation. But I mean, in terms of stuff that wasn't the manager, I guess the players, it's just been sensational. I mean, the results and the goals speak for themselves. The Leicester game was just such fun, like goals galore, some legal and some illegal, apparently.
McAllister being denied a hat-trick is a crime, by the way.
So it's just been brilliant. I mean, it's just been perfect. It kind of felt like, pre He Who Shall Not Be Named, doing the dirty. It just felt like it was like everything was coming together. We've been threatening to be that good for what, two years, something like that. And then in those first, whatever it is, 6 games or whatever, everything was just and just clicked into place. And then the whole world goes upside down, and the future, although uncertain, exciting, I guess. Uncertainty is the essence of football, isn't it? Really, and that's definitely where we are now. But yeah, so far, brilliant in terms of non-manager related situation.
Any particular players that have stood out to you so far as well?
I think I would probably commit my life to McAllister. I think he is the sexiest footballer I've ever seen, ever. I loved him before we signed him. He used to play for Boca Juniors. Is there a cooler football team in the world than Boca Juniors? And just to see him just owning that position now, it's Bissouma, who he's rotting on the bench at Spurs, and McAllister has just taken up that mantle. Arguably, and I'm prepared to get some hate on this, arguably a more dynamic player than Bissouma. He has more range. He can shoot. Bissouma couldn't shoot. So I think, he's just been so great to watch, and he's just such a sexy footballer.
Yeah, based on how many goals Bissouma scored, I think we can put them all down to flukes. Especially the one against Wolves. That was a P-roller, and the goalkeeper should have done something about that. But you pay homage to Pascal Gross as well. Just how important his impact been this season, and keeping him as well. Obviously, we want you to stay. He's staying. He's come out in so many interviews to say how much he loves the city. How important is it that we kept him?
He's just not that it was in doubt for me before this season, but I feel like the end of last season and rolling over into the beginning of this, he's just cemented his place as one of our greatest ever players. He's just been brilliant. His attitude, as you were saying, I saw some interview with him where he was like, "Yeah, I could go to Liverpool, but it might not be as good. It might be rubbish. Look at Bissouma. I'm not. I'll keep kind of shitting on Bissouma. I don't mean to, but it could be worse. So he's just technically and mentally just a really phenomenal individual, and no doubt one of our best ever.
The way I describe him, he's just like the most professional football player. I can't really explain it. He's just the professional football player's professional football player. You know what I mean by that? Just does everything he needs to do with so much class.
100%.
Right back.
Yeah. And I think that translates to his technique as well. He's just got such a purity with the way he strikes the ball and moves the ball. I can't really remember him putting a foot wrong or misplacing anything. Obviously he's limited in certain respects, all footballers are. People go on about his pace, that's sort of relevant. But his his technique is just exactly like you're saying, Curtis, just like true.
Yeah, we speak about legendary status on this podcast a lot. Something me and Tom spoke about in our agree to disagree episode as well. Pascal Gross, legend. Could you dub him as that yet?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. For me, yeah. I think the last few games have further cemented that, but kind of unarguably our best player of the Premier League years. And for me, he goes up there with the best ever. There we are.
Curtis agrees. Amazing.
Very good, Curtis. Yeah, it's hard to argue with any of that, James. Really, Pascal's been a revelation since returning to the side earlier this calendar year. And I think people like Pascal Gross are going to be very important in the transition we see during De Zerbi's first few games in charge. So, James, looking ahead to what is going to be a pretty tough bedding in period for Roberto De Zerbi, and we go to Liverpool next. Would you like to share any predictions of how you think that game might go?
I mean, impossible to say. I mean, it's on paper, it's, as tough as they come. But then it's also like new manager bounce, kind of element of the unknown. Those fixtures are pretty much scratch, aren't they, really? Like, you don't expect to get much. Although I know we have beaten Liverpool quite a lot recently. But I think it could work well for us having this completely kind of unknown entity turn up. And if you lose, I mean, most of the time you lose those games anyway. So yeah, I'm just really excited. I think like De Zerbi just seems like a really cool individual, and I'm really excited to see what his football looks like. Yeah, what do you guys think?
Something again that the fans are just going to have to be patient with. Like I went on Radio 5 Live when Chelsea appointed Graham Potter to talk essentially to a Chelsea fan, which broke my heart a little bit. But I told them to just give him time and just be patient. From what I've read of De Zerbi, he's a very exciting coach, and Tony Bloom's taken a huge risk. But I think we just have to give him time, and there's no more of a risk to De Zerbi than there was when we appointed Graham Potter, in my opinion.
Exactly.
So I think we just have to give him time, see what happens. And the main thing is staying in the division, and then let's see what we can achieve next year.
Yeah, and like he'll get that time as well. Like really, Potter only really found his rhythm by the end of last season, really, arguably. So that's 2 years of kind of putting up with 8 games without winning, and like an element of frustration. So I think he, like De Zerbi, is probably conscious that this is the right club for him in that sense. In he'll get that patience.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we're not one to jump the gun, as it were. I don't even think Sami Hyypiä, I think he tried to leave the club and Tony Bloom was like, nope. But it was actually announced today that international clearance had been granted for De Zerbi and his coaching team. And it was also nice to see that Andrew Crofts will be moving to the first team coaching setup as well. I'm a big fan of Andrew Crofts. I remember, when back in the 2010s, he was absolutely fantastic for the club. So James, I mean, just really quickly about Andrew Crofts, are you happy to see him as part of the first team setup?
Yeah, for sure. I remember that. Was it when we played at St Mary's and he scored that goal, and it was televised at the time, and I was at university, so I couldn't go. And I remember watching it, and it was amazing that we were on telly. And then we beat one of the best teams, or we were the best team in that. No, the next season. But they had this insane budget, and we absolutely tore them apart. And Crofts was a really key part of that. Again, just seems like a really good guy, and perfect for the setup. I think it's been really interesting to watch, with all the people that have left and how their kind of replacement has come from within. I think that's just really good strategy. You're always conscious of who can fill that role, and he just seems perfectly suited for that kind of, that. I can't really say his name properly anymore, but the bald-headed former Brighton player in that kind of role, really. So yeah, it seems like a good bloke, and exciting.
Yeah,
there were a lot of people that said that there wouldn't be a space for the bald-headed bearded man, as you say. But with Cross going up, then surely that means there would have been some sort of job security for him if he did want to stay.
I don't buy that argument that people said, the reason he went was because his job couldn't be secured. Like in top flight football, how many coaches are there in a first team squad? And it's not like the old days where you have one, or now that they can have 4, 5, 6. Like Chelsea have kept all theirs and got all Graham Potters. So I just don't buy that argument that there wouldn't have been a job for Bruno had he stuck around. Yeah, I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
Well, James, lastly, right? End of the season, you're sitting back with a beer, right? You're looking up at the table. Where are Brighton in the table? What's a prediction?
Like if I had to put money on it, sort of thing.
Yes, right now.
Hedge my bets and say 10th.
Good
But
shout.
we know how tight the pure mathematics are in this league. And last season, if a couple of draws had turned into wins and a couple of losses had become draws, we would probably be talking about our European tour that we're currently on. So this league is so strange how what it does to teams in terms of their final position. I could confidently say we'd finish higher than that, and I could also kind of regretfully but logically say we could finish lower than that and be threatened by the dreaded R word. But if I had to put money on it, and you can catch up with me in whatever it is, 8 months' time, I'd probably say 10th or whatever I just said, 10th, 11th, something like that. Yeah.
I'd just say how weird it is that we haven't played for like a month, and it's still going to be like another God knows how many days until we play a game of football
and
again.
We're still in 4th, which is mad.
Yeah, honestly.
And then there's the World Cup, so we've got a massive gap again.
It feels like COVID football all over again, like big old gaps and not knowing when it's going to come back. And I don't know how we stay so mentally sane with it being ripped away from us again.
Well, that's a really interesting point, actually, isn't it? Like for so many people, it provides that kind of structure and that consistency and that like rhythm to their week. Certainly for me, and I feel like if people are kind of relying on that and it's not around, it's could be tricky.
Yeah, what you need to do to get your football fix or Brighton of Albion fix is go down into the description, go to DOGMA.Brighton.co. What is it? Sorry, James?
DOGMABrighton.com, yeah.
DOGMABrighton.com and get yourself one of these. That's what you need to do.
I appreciate it, guys. Thanks.
Yeah,
no worries.
It's football means so much to all of us in so many different ways. And as you say, it's very bitty this season. I'm sure we'll catch up with the fixture congestion a bit later on. But if you are needing a football fix, of course, check out DOGMABrighton.com and their socials for their wonderful fanzines, because they really are spectacular. I can't emphasize enough just how interesting it is to read these fan perspectives. And as James says, there's so many talented, wonderful individuals working on them. It really is worth checking them out. So
and
James,
you get some fun stickers too.
And you get fun stickers, and you won't get this because that already came in way.
It's so cool you framed that, Tom. It's so cool.
I've well, you might not know, listeners, but every time you get one of these lovely fanzines, you get the front cover as well, and I've framed all of those as well, James, and they're in my office.
That's amazing. Thank you.
So, but no, it's been a genuine pleasure, James, to have you on here and to chat about Dogma and all the wonderful things you guys are up to over there. We really hope that you have a fantastic season, and we really wish you all the best for the future, because it is a really exciting project. I know we've said it before, but to actually be able to hold something is quite remarkable in this day and age, I feel. So it is really nice to sit there in bed with a cup of tea, flicking through your Dogma. That's what
we sound like such old men. Like everything's digital now. It's disgusting.
Well, I am.
It sounds like you've got a wild weekend lined up anyway, Tom. So
got to recover from all this teaching malarkey.
I just can't say thanks enough for like having like all the nice things you've said about Dogma are completely reciprocated by from us to what you guys are doing. And just thanks so much. Means a lot.
No worries at all, James. You're
very
always
much.
welcome on as well. Like the next issue, come on and we can sort of, as you suggested in messages to me, do a deep dive into it and talk about all of the issues raised within it. So many important things are raised in this issue. So yeah, it'd be really good to do a real delve into it.
That'd be great. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, guys, thank you very much for joining us on this Albion Obsessed special with Dogma Brighton. Please check them out in the links below. If you have not done so already, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content, because as ever, we've got wonderful stuff coming your way. A few interviews, perhaps with some former players, maybe. But more on that later. Wherever you are, whenever you are, have a great day, evening, morning, weekend. See you next time. Take
Keep
care.
it real.
Keep it real.